Welcome to Work is Good, a CSM podcast. My name is Landon Buteau, and I host the show with my dad, Chris Buteau, the owner and president at CSM. Well, we are back with another conversation with Philip Meech of Cafe Luso, and this conversation will be really interesting for anyone who's curious about the process that coffee goes through to get from the farm to the grocery store where you pick it up, and especially regarding the certifications that go on a lot of the coffees you see in those stores. Philip has some strong feelings about the validity and the value of those certifications and what that process could look like and should look like, and offers an interesting perspective on what to look for. So please enjoy today's conversation, and remember that if you're interested in getting a mortgage with our team at CSM, go to clevelandstreet.com. All right, I am back here with Philip, and we are neck deep in a heated conversation here about coffee certifications. So, Philip, I'm going to make you walk back a little bit and kind of give some context for me and for the audience, because for me, walking to the grocery store, you just see whatever organic fair trade certification sticker on a coffee bag, and there's some basic assumptions I can make about it, but I don't know all that goes into that. So just give me a context of the conversation here, and then let's get into your thoughts here.
Yeah, so there's all these certifications in coffee, like I mentioned earlier. Like there's probably at least a dozen, and the ones that most people are familiar with is probably like certified organic, maybe certified fair trade, maybe Rainforest Alliance or Shade Grown. And then there's some obscure ones like from the Netherlands, like UTS Kappa. And there's industrial certifications like ISO 9000 or ISO 14000 about health and human safety and sanitation in production facilities and manufacturing processes and whatnot. There's certified rain fed, like that's a thing. Sun dried is a certification. Like there's all kinds of sort of bizarro stuff like that. And who do you trust? That's kind of the question, is if you're going to make a moral play when you're in aisle 4B at the grocery store and you want to buy some coffee and you're like, well, this one says if we buy it, somebody gets an extra free pair of shoes, or this one over here means there's nothing harmful in it, or this one over here. And it's like, if it's just one product like coffee, like we were talking, like no problem. But how much time do you have to do grocery shopping? I mean, when you're in every aisle and everything you pick up, if I buy this sour cream, the ducks are going to live longer. And if I buy this sour cream, I don't know what the connection is between ducks and sour cream. It's just like, to make it ridiculous, because a lot of it is. And so what's the whole thing here is like, if we stamp 6 certifications, then you buy this product and you're saving the world. Is that the idea? Or you're going to sleep better at night because you're doing your part? Or are you honestly just trying to like, hey, I'm sensitive to chemicals, so I really want to make sure there's no chemicals. I mean, there's certainly a sanitary.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, like I get it.
There's probably reasonable reasons to do it, and not so reasonable.
The thing is, like, this is just old commerce tricks. So fair trade, let's pick on fair trade. It's finally sort of dying, but like we turned down a multi-million-dollar annual contract 20 years ago because I wouldn't play that game, because I know too much about what happens at the farm level.
So, like, flesh that out. What was the opportunity? What did you have to, like, why wouldn't you do it? What was involved with saying yes?
Yeah, so we were roasting 3,000, 4,000 pounds of coffee, or actually 3,000 or 4,000 12-ounce bags of coffee every month for a national chain you have probably shopped in, or your wife, in the last week or something like that. And that was all of 2013, 2003. It was 20 years ago. And so we were producing for them 4,000 bags a month. They loved it. It was selling well. Buyer flies up from headquarters and says, hey, can you do 7 times this amount? Can you do 30,000 bags a month?
Wow.
And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, that's just sort of, there's no big jobs, only small machines. It's an old R.G. Letourneau quote.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we can do that. We have logistics. We have great, processes and systems. We have a cool fulfillment partner. Like everything's fine there. We can get the coffee. But like, do you know, is it actually 30,000? Or like, oh yeah, it's just
Yeah.
we'll be up or down 3%. All we're doing is scaling you from 17 stores to like 150 or something like that. And it's like we just know that's what the number is. We like your coffee. And I'm like, well, I hear who makes the best truffle in America? Probably somebody's grandma in Kentucky or whatever on this old stove. Like there's people
Yep.
that can make the good thing, but they don't have the logistics and deployment. They're not, kind of on the
Yeah.
supply chain and the business side. They can make a cool thing, but like they just whatever. They don't have the infrastructure or the experience or the discipline or whatever the problem is. So we had all those pieces, but I still said, like, I hear about small mom and pop vendor and they get into some large national retailer that rhymes with
Yeah.
Walmart. And all of a sudden they literally grow themselves into bankruptcy because they have to go get a $2 million, $5 million loan, build out a new plant, do all these crazy things. Then the margin squeeze shows up 6 months later, a year later, and I'm like, I don't want to play that game.
Yeah. That's a huge growth. Yeah.
I mean, you want a $5 million company that makes 2% profit, or do you want a $1 million company that makes a 30% profit? Like, you got to pick your business goals and think about those things. But there are tons of companies that have literally grown themselves into bankruptcy.
Right.
I think that might have been an old Brett Baker life experience share.
He did mention that on Boston Market.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. So
he mentioned that on the podcast. Yeah.
So we're thinking about this deal, and they're like, no, we don't change your margins. We'll work out whatever terms we need to. We just need you to scale and produce. And so we're 3 hours that the buyer comes up from headquarters in California, and we're talking about this deal. We go and we look at our fulfillment partner, and everything is great. I mean, I made him a cappuccino, and the guy calls his wife on the spot in Luso 2.0. We're in 3.5 now, headed to 4.0. And he said, I just had the best cappuccino of my entire life at Luso. They're better than anything I had in Italy. Like, he's excited.
That's awesome.
I'm excited.
Wow.
Everything's looking, it's all lined up. And he loves the fulfillment partner. He's like, great. Somebody's thinking about supply chain infrastructure and systems and processes. And, this is going to be great. Well, somewhere in that time, he says, oh, and by the way, this is really important for us that this is certified organic and fair trade. And my heart sunk because I'm like, after all costs, we're making like $1 a bag, which isn't much, but when you're at 30,000 bags a month or more,
Yeah.
and that's just the beginning. And when you're 26, I'm like, what am I going to do with 30 grand a month? I don't know if I was making 30 grand a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going to buy my mom a new car. I'm going to get my friends into their first condos.
That's a life change right there.
Yeah, it's sort of a bit of a game changer. So, but I knew how how things went down at the farm level, and I knew that farmers weren't getting near what people thought they were. The co-ops were getting a stipulated pay.
So what is so fair trade specifically is what you're thinking of right now, right?
Well, yeah, fair trade.
Organic.
There's some dirt and grime in all the certifications, but let's just pick on fair trade.
So what's the disparity between what people think it means and what it actually means?
A lot of the literature at the time would talk about how the futures price for coffee, so export grade on the New York Board of Trade, called the C contract that expires, and I think it's the third Friday every quarter. And at the time, because it's denominated in U.S. currency, so like at the time it was probably like 60 or 70 cents a pound or whatever it was. It's coffee that's legal for trade. I don't know if it's coffee that you want to drink. Excuse me. Well, in the fair trade system, they're like, the minimum price is $1.26 a pound. I don't know how they came up with that, but it was presented in such a way to the consumer that you're like, wow, we're in this global, there's a glut of coffee, the supply is too high, so magically, don't ask me how this works, the supply is too high, so the price was really low. And there was too much coffee being made in the world. warehouse stocks were too high, crops were too high, all that.
Hmm.
But everybody just hears like, wow, it's 60 cents and every farmer is in abject poverty, which is true. Many farmers are in subsistence living. That's true enough.
Yeah.
But they're like, we're just going to make the price $1.26. So when you ask what's the problem, people are looking at that going, well, $1.26 sounds, that's fair. That's better. Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
That's what it should be. I don't know why wasn't it $1.16? Why wasn't it $1.46? How'd you get
Yeah.
that? I mean, nobody questions.
So
that.
the idea is, yeah, we support, fair labor by setting this subjective minimum price. And
yeah, like every econ student should be like going bonkers right now because guaranteed
subjectively,
price
yeah,
are not, well, they're not durable, they're not tenable over time. Trying to have this Peter Pan land where you disconnect supply and demand in the marketplace. Look, who's the governor of Washington? Inslee. If Inslee shows up at Luso and says, let's do an audit of your costs. Aha, it is $6 to produce a roasted pound of coffee, or after marketing and labor and whatever, maybe it's $8, or maybe it's $5, or it's some number. Let's just say that it's $5 for a roasted pound for this type of coffee with these inputs. I'll give you $5.50, he says, for every pound of coffee that you can produce. Okay, is the econ like maybe 200 level, 300 level theory of the firm? What's the first thing that we do? Well, if you're going to guarantee me that you'll just buy whatever I produce at a cost that is, or at a price that is higher than our cost of production, that roaster spins 24 hours a day.
Mm.
You no longer have the idea of excess capacity, because if you are capacitating, I went to WSU, so I get to make up words for the rest of my life. My English is a little, anyway. Like you can just, like, why wouldn't we start doing that? Why get bigger roasters? So the question really is, so where does that go? And I would postulate that you cannot do this David Copperfield, let's get away from reality and make things appear and disappear. If you're trying to disconnect from supply and demand, and you'll guarantee that you will produce higher than the cost of production that producer just wants to produce, I would submit to you that cannot function over time durably without an element of either philanthropy or theft or a mix.
Yeah. So the fair trade, though, it's not necessarily, it's not like a government induced requirement. It's just this subjective idea that if you want to be if you want to have our sticker and tell consumers that you're paying farmers properly, then you got to subjectively meet this price.
There are third party, they're almost like big NGOs. There are third party certifiers that have their own list of criteria. And you have to do some crazy digging to find out. I mean, nobody's going to go through the 1,200 pages to figure out why they're setting prices the way they are, what the restrictions are. I've heard that some fair trade co-ops were closed down for super shenanigan practices. But like if Landon rolls up to the co-op, because Landon grows coffee, and Landon says, hey, I'm here, I've got 100 sacks, quintales, 100-pound sacks of my parchment coffee. It's been depulped, it's not cherry, but it's seeds with a silver skin. And the co-op can literally say, we'll buy 10 of those bags at the fair trade price. So here's an extra nickel a pound. Because that was another part of fair trade, is like once the market, the supply and demand curve got hit $1.20, $1.25, then the fair trade price would forever ride at 5 cents above market. Which is also super just bizarro land. Like, well, it's only when it hits $1.20 that it rides at 5 cents. Why isn't it when the market's at 80 cents? Why doesn't it hit, all these questions about CVP, cost volume profit analysis, just kind of out the window, because you're playing in this boogeyman world, this bizarro land. And at the end of the day, the consumers are all hoodwinked, and they're like, yes, if I buy this, I'm going to sleep better tonight. I'm going to save the planet. I'm going to save humanity.
Right.
No more effects of the fall in 6 months. Everybody's going to be prosperous. Woohoo!
Yep.
And you kind of feel for the plight of the consumer, because it's like, well, who do you trust? You want to make a good purchase decision. So there you are in aisle 4 at Whole Foods or whatever. And here's all these marketing claims about the product. This one, I don't know, is better for your liver, and this one is more energy, and this one is lower caffeine, and
Right. Yeah.
1,000 certifications. So do you trust the third party so-called nonprofit stamp from this government thing called fair trade, or what about organic? So that's a government, that's a USDA and FDA in our state, Washington. That's a Washington State Department of Ag thing where they supposedly have some analysis of the supply chain, but we've seen so much dirt and grime and shenanigans in that I mean, I'm all for buying organic produce, as I said, but like, good luck. Like, it's probably half the time something that's organic is actually organic.
Yeah. Okay. So if anyone was kind of on the fence before, got a persuasive pitch from you there as far as the real meaning of the fair trade label.
Yeah.
What is your process? I guess,
That's a good question. One last
and you might need to fill in a little bit just the coffee process, the just very generally speaking.
Let me come back to that in a second. I have to comment. So when people are like, "Yeah, you got to buy fair trade coffee," nobody stops and goes, "Fair according to who?"
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by fair?
Yeah.
What are we going to work with definitions here? Is this objective enough that people can examine this thing, or are we just going to be kind of squishy? Like, yay for celestial tapioca, but like, are you just going to keep existing with the backbone of a jellyfish? Or
I mean, the connotation right away is it gives more to the people who need it, is basically what it communicates in, just in our minds, just kind of intrinsically. But, you don't ask beyond that.
Yeah. Same thing with organic. Like,
what's fair? Yeah. Who are they taking from in order to give their, where is it coming from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's organic exactly? Like, which set of chemicals are permissible? Which set of pesticides, insecticides? What about nutrients? I mean, it's such a big, once you get a peek under the rug, it'll make your head pop and be like, whoa, I think I'm just going to avoid all of them. So to wrap up this little section, I've told people forever, probably, because I do feel that sort of plight for the consumer, but I would say probably the best thing that you can do is buy the best quality product that you can, that your budget allows for. Because nobody gets away with crazy stuff over a long enough period of time. Landon, right now, we could put together a little investment company and go buy 10 coffee farms in Panama and go down there and say, how do we jack the yields up like crazy? And how do we short all the labor? And you'll get away with that for like a season.
Yeah.
But those nomadic pickers that, hit the neighborhoods, hit the cities, and then they go on to the next farm. If you're running a bogus operation, you think they're going to stick around? I mean, they might if they have to, or they might till the next better offer comes along, or something of the sort. But you won't get away with it over time, and that is why I say, like, just try to. I think the best safety net that I know of that is broad and minimal information is buy the best quality stuff that your budget allows for. And if you buy that over a long enough period of time, and you see there's consistency, probably the supply chain is not super crazy or as bad as it could be.
Yeah.
So
yeah, helpful. So quality stuff, best quality stuff. Let's say it's, it looks quality. It's not got one of those stickers on it though. What is the process to get to that point where I'm seeing it in the grocery store?
Can you clarify your question a little further?
So if it's not, if it doesn't have the fair trade certification, for example, describe the general, farm to grocery store process, and then also, how it works along the way when it's done right.
So coffee is the biggest beverage industry on the planet besides water. Like, it's bigger than tea, it's bigger than all soft drinks, it's bigger than wine, it's bigger than all alcohol combined. I mean, it's huge. It's hard to get your head around.
Yeah.
So because of that, Yeah, there's like 18,000 models out there. I mean, you could have coffee from out of the ground and have 6 or 7, 8 layers of trade. So the farmer grows it and picks it. He sells it to a guy on the truck. All right, stop one. Somebody's driving around. I'll buy your coffee cherry. Here's cash. Give me the cherry. Then he'll sell it to some other local buyer or a consortium. They might sell it up the chain to a national buyer. That national buyer might run it through a miller. The miller will do certain things to finish the processing, and then grade, sort, screen, polish, pack, and wrap, palletize on a boat, the whole speech. Now it goes to a global brokerage of distribution. Now it might go in country somewhere, and then it might end up at a roaster and then a retailer. So you see where I'm going? Like, yeah, you could have like 10, 12 steps of hands in the pot. So we do what is commonly now called direct trade or direct relationship, which is not the most helpful term because it is not regulated, so anybody can just say it. So I kind of like it because it's not regulated, and I kind of like, well, you can also abuse it pretty easily. The idea is for us is that we buy farm gate. We know the grower. We send the check to the owner of the farm. Or maybe there's one layer, but there's still context for relationship, and we can go to the farm. Instead of like, so American business selling coffee, I'm going to fly out to Pennsylvania. I'm going to wear a suit. I'm going to stay at a hotel. Everything's arm's length transaction. Thank you, IRS. And like, yeah, it's just business. Well, you fly down to a farm in Nicaragua, and the family will pick you up at the airport. And the roads are awful, so you get like self-chiropractic all the way back to like the farm, just hold on. And you're gonna stay in their home. Whether that's at the farm or near the farm, you are going to stay with their kids.
Have you done that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Awesome. You are going to eat at their dinner table. Like, it's still big business. It's a lot of dollars involved, but the hospitality is on a different gear. And the context of that relationship is radically different too. So we like that. And then when we pay the owner of the farm, we know what they're getting. We pay them what they ask. We don't have a costing department that says, we know their cost of production over there. That's another thing, by the way, about the fair trade thing that should just drive everybody batty from just a secular econ 100 level is you can't just magically pull a number out of a hat and say $1.26 is the right number.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So how much should a first year mortgage originator make in the year 2000 or 2005 or 2010 or 2023? Pick a year.
What's fair?
What's fair? So if I say $50,000 a year and you're like, well, you have already factored that into what you know about your cost of living, your geography. You're probably thinking the Seattle area. And you're like, well, that doesn't get very far. And it sure doesn't get very far if you've got student debt and car payments and supporting kids, or I mean, there's all these other things that you have auto contextualized.
Yeah.
Are you loaded with debt? Do you $50,000 a year to someone who's 20 in?
So that $1.26 is what, Honduras to Nicaragua to Rwanda? Like, that's the same.
We haven't even gotten to like currency trade yet. Like, we're just talking about, does your farm have automation, and do you make 10 million pounds a year, or do you make 100,000 pounds a year, or 3,000 pounds a year? Is your farm paid off? What's your labor structure look like? We have not even gone dollars to the Costa Rican colon or the Brazilian real or the Nicaraguan Cordoba or whatever. We haven't even gotten that far yet. So what's the right amount for a coffee roaster to make? And if I say $75,000 a year, that does different things. If you have a small thing and you're in the middle of Iowa versus if you're a roaster in Upper Manhattan and you're making $100,000 a year, you are sleeping in somebody's broom closet. So you just can't. It's just fiscally sloppy to go, here's the right number, and now there's no more problems. Like, that's their here, buy my stuff, buy my swag, buy my coffee. It's fair trade. And that means $1.26. Even if the grower got that, I was having a chat in 2007 in Matagalpa, northern Nicaragua, talking to this farmer, and we're going on and on. I'm like, hey, everybody in the U.S., 15, 18 years ago was very excited about fair trade. everyone in the U.S. is excited because it's $1.26 a pound. We had chatted for 5 minutes. He didn't speak English. My Spanish is so bad. Anyway, so we're playing the telephone game because there's this interpreter,
Mm-hmm.
and the conversation just stopped when he heard $1.26. And I thought he was going to grab his machete. He's like, "What are you?" He's like, "What are you talking about? Last year was a good year. I'm in the fair trade system, and I got paid 39 cents a pound. And my 92-year-old grandfather, I escaped. His words, not mine. I escaped from that system, which is another factor people don't think about. In small agriculture communities that are way outside of a small town, higher robbery land. My 92-year-old grandfather is still stuck in that system. What are we doing wrong? What do you mean $1.26? And I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought. And this is why I rejected that annual multi-million-dollar contract at age 26, because I'm like, this is not, I know too much. I can't do this with a clean conscience before God.
Yeah, because you're putting you're not just just agreeing to do that. It would be one thing if you were agreeing to do that, to subjectively slap that price on your coffee, but what you're doing is communicating something with their sticker that isn't happening.
I have no control over what the farmer gets paid.
Right. And is that the idea that the $1.26 that's what ends up in the farmer's hands?
Well, again, if you go through, a whole bunch of pages of fine print in the published documentation from the Fair Trade Org, they'll sooner or later get around to not exactly lying, but that's not what is effectively conveyed to the public. And if you're not doing the research and you're watching the news, guess what happens when you just watch the news? You think you're informed? Like, it's just, it's a brutal realization that you are responsible once you have light on how things operate or how things are true or not. You have a new gear. If you're a believer before the Lord, you're accountable for what you know. Act accordingly. It's like you have to. 2 Timothy 2:6 says, the hardworking farmer ought to be the first to receive his share in the harvest or in the crop. Okay, I'm not trying to be an exegetical weirdo like Paul's talking to Timothy about specific context, but if you look throughout the history of the world, throughout agriculture, usually the farmer is the shortest end of the stick. Like, it's just how it goes. So
yeah,
I like a system and a model where we can make sure growers are getting paid and that they have a profit motive, a profit incentive to make better coffee, because that's a value to us. Our customers get better coffee. We know that they're sustainable. There is a way to interact with the word sustainable that's not in a flimsy, lip flapping, just sort of like, gooey, like, oh yeah, sustainable business. Nobody knows what the word means, but everybody uses it.
Right. Yeah. It carries a lot of connotations.
Yeah. So there's great way, and there's tons of great roasters that have great buying practices. We don't have like this little corner on we're the truthful coffee company. We're the good guys. There's hundreds of roasters in this country that have awesome buying practices. There's big companies that have awesome buying practices. So what do you do? Well, I don't have quite enough time to go around and take shots at everybody else who's doing stuff weird. It's what I can do is I can tell you what we do and how we do. If you want to listen to me blabber on for half an hour, I can tell you why we do it. I can tell you the ups and the downs, the considerations. But it's hard, back to the consumer thing. Like, I get it. It's hard. Like, if I want to buy this bag of coffee, maybe I look it up online and their website makes claims. And the grocery store might make a claim. And the seals and stamps that are on there may or may not make a claim. And the expose on the news this morning might make a claim. And there's all this stuff. And it gets really complicated. And back to my first question, how much time do you have to grocery shop? Can you make a moral play on every product, on every decision based on some stamp on the banana? Why? It gets kind of weird. So, but I get it for the consumer. Most people are just trying to make many people are trying to make good choices. And I think that back to square one, like, if you have no other net, buy the best product that your budget allows for, and if you have good referrals, which is still king, I think,
Yeah.
as opposed to marketing claims.
Yeah. And have a healthy dose of cynicism.
Can't have enough, baby.
All right. Well, we'll call it there for this week. That's helpful. It's I think it prompts just a little bit more, cynicism, a little bit more research. Just don't necessarily take everything that you hear about those kind of products, especially when there are obvious agendas attached to certain things. Don't take them on their surface. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like you buy, people that know me know like I'm a fashion disaster, proudly. And I think I spend between $50 and $60 a year on clothes. And most of that is like new
That's
underwear.
really impressive, Phil.
Every 6 months at Costco. I mean, now, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can go and buy my every 6 months new underwear and socks at Costco, or a new pair of jeans or whatever for $14. I don't know if that's slave labor or not. I don't. I might make a different decision if I knew authentically. But this is back to trusting. This is on the business side. This is back to brand, and this is why we say at Luso, like, there's only two things that we really do under that roof: build trust, or maintain trust.
And maintain it. I'm remembering it at this point.
Awesome. I mean, it's like, so make sure your brand, like Warren Buffett during the Salomon Brothers scandal, and what was that, 1990, 91, and he goes and he takes over, temporarily go back, watch the YouTube footage and read all about it. It's just good to know about. At the end of it all, he said, like, this is the directive to employees. If you lose money for the firm, I will be understanding. This is a rough transition. This is, all this stuff is going on. If you lose money for the firm, I'll be understanding. If you cost this firm a shred, an ounce of reputation, I will be ruthless. That is good wisdom. If people make mistakes, if somebody is roasting coffee at Luso and they botch a batch and there goes $400, $500, okay, that's not ideal. But people make mistakes. I make mistakes. I'm sure I make lots of mistakes every day. You can be understanding for those things. But like, if you do things that cost the reputation and integrity, there's no real good recovery from that. You can't credit card your way out of that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't take a loan on reputation.
I mean, when the brand is laid down, it's kind of permanent.
Yeah.
And
it's, I think, to your point, it's not about the actual weight of the moral decision. It's not about not caring about where your dollar goes, who it's supporting.
Sure.
It's just about, to your point, Proverbs talks about not believing everything you hear as well, and
it's good wisdom.
It's a healthy, wise cynicism. And there's probably, it's not just forget every label and don't pay attention to anything. There's probably some obligation on you to figure out where your dollar is going to some extent. But just not buying everything on its surface, I think, is a helpful reminder.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's in the flavor of, I don't know, pay attention. Like, you get different amounts of information about different companies, products, brands, information about industries, trends. I mean, like, you just pay attention, and like, you're responsible for what you know.
Yep. Yeah, helpful summary. Awesome. Well, thanks, Philip. We'll call it there.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Work is Good. If you enjoyed it, share it with someone else, leave a review, and listen next week.